Hello, guys. I am sure you all know what we're here for today. I sat down and have just finished watching the third episode of Adolescence. I am wearing the same outfit because I watched it after recording my thoughts on episode 2. I had some time to digest, had a bit of a chill, and then we decided we're going to try and finish it. We're going to try and finish episode 3 and 4 today, so there could even be a third innings in the same outfit. And yeah, this episode had hype. This is the episode I have heard people mention myriad times, and without people really giving spoilers away, people were still saying like episode 3 is amazing. So I didn't really know what to expect coming into it. What I will say is it's definitely exceeded my expectations. In all fairness, it was incredible. So let me set the scene for you. We're introduced to a new character almost immediately, and we initially don't know who she is, and we also don't know what she does, and we don't know where they are. Though, we can kind of make an assumption that it's some sort of prison or holding place for Jamie. However, what I didn't expect was for this new character who was called Bryony. I did not expect her to be a psychologist. And, well, she was. That's where we are in this episode. So, let me just briefly sum it up. This episode sees Bryony, who is a child psychologist, come into a holding facility, which is actually some sort of mental health facility, rather than an actual dedicated prison. They mention that in the show, that it's because they couldn't find appropriate secure lodgings for him that weren't there, blah blah blah. You get the whole thing that I'm getting at there. They addressed it at the very least. She is basically just assessing Jamie to try and garner his understanding of things. So his understanding of the crime that's been committed, his understanding of death, his understanding of court procedures, what a judge is, what a judge does, his understanding of the law. And the whole episode takes on the form of a fly on the wall element, if you will, and sees an assessment, a conversation, an interview between Jamie and Bryony. Now, it was a breath of fresh air. Why was it a breath of fresh air? Well, I didn't expect it. I expected, some sort of conversation with a professional, a psychologist. I maybe expected something, with some other sort of professional, maybe, I don't know, maybe solicitor, but I didn't expect it to be this way. First and foremost, realistically, the perspective is mainly carried from the psychologist, Bryony, not from Jamie. So we follow her character around. We see her enter the building, we see her talk to other members of staff, we see her leaving the room to get coffee, etc., etc., etc. Now that's very fresh. They could have very easily gone down the route of following Jamie, which makes sense to an extent, doesn't it? The story is based on his actions, what he's done. You could go as far as to say the story is even based on him, because as I mentioned in the last episode, it's a deliberate decision to not acknowledge Katie and Katie's family and Katie's aftermath. They're more exploring the aftermath of the people who have committed these crimes and the effect it has on their family and their surroundings. But we'll park that for a moment and we'll say it's what it is. It was good to see it from that perspective. I wasn't expecting it from that perspective, let me tell you that. And you really get an insight into Jamie in this episode. So let's move past that. The actor who plays Bryony is Erin Doherty or Doherty. Doherty. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It has two different pronunciations. I would say Doherty because it's with an H there. But she is incredible. She now takes the spot for me of the standout performance of this series. Everybody, rightly so, is praising Jamie Owen Cooper, is it? Owen Cooper. Completely understandable. Breakthrough role, lead role. He's doing a lot. It's an intense show to be doing, and he does it with, let's be honest, aplomb. However, Bryony's character was just so authentic. It was the real deal. And honest to God, her performance was stellar. She had to express such a broad range. She had to show range. She had to show range. She was going from professional. She was going from the person being in the driving seat. She was going from this quite closed up character, if you will, to we literally see her weeping at the end because of the turmoil this whole situation has put her through. And you know, some of the things that Jamie has said to her, she also opens up to him a bit more as he opens up to her. And, you know, there's a power dynamic that's constantly trying to shift and change and morph. And she is just incredible. Great acting, fantastic actor. And she really did a performance. She really did an episode with just two characters, really, Jamie and her, and she carried it with him. He carried it as well, obviously, but like, I'll touch upon that later, but it was amazing. Now, the show itself, the episode itself, because of the lack of characters, relied on two main things: script and story writing and cinematography. So the cinematography in this episode is incredible. There's no other word for it. There's no other word for it. There is a motif in it where the lighting shifts darker and you can start hearing the rain heavier, like thudding heavier. And that usually is signifying a change in Jamie, where he'll become angry, agitated, aggressive, misogynistic multiple times throughout. And the script, his acting, her acting, and the cinematography and the sounding, all these elements come together and it creates this really simple but haunting and powerful episode. And it really is that powerful. It got to a point where we were towards the end of it, and the rain was thundering a bit more, and the lighting was changing. And I was getting fucking nervous. I was legitimately getting I was starting to feel it in my stomach. I was getting like a pit in my stomach. And that's been something that this show's been good at doing across the 3 episodes for me so far, to be honest. I've felt it. I felt it, if that makes sense. And, you know, I can't help but think that this episode was truly it must have taken a toll on both the actors to have gone in like that, to have gone in so heavy. And it's just the way it's choreographed and brought together. It's just incredible. It's incredible. So yeah, it creates this really haunting, this really powerful episode. And to be honest with you, other than the first 10 minutes where we're just getting into it and we're just starting to get into it, Bryony's character's being introduced, other than that, it doesn't really let up. The whole thing is just intense. There's a security guard in it who watches a CCTV, and there's also some sort of nurse or orderly, if you will, who stands outside the room whilst the interview's taking place. And other than that, that's about it character-wise. Both of those characters are males. The nurse seems to have sympathy towards Jamie. Do you know, just that familiarity? Yeah, you know, I'm not saying there's no misogyny there and it's not deep rooted and it's not displaying that, you know, like he's on the boys' side. But it did kind of strike me as just like the kind of that normal caregiver towards a child, where they're being a bit delicate with him, which sums up more of the side of the adolescence theme. Does he deserve that support? I guess that's the nature of the show, isn't it? Adolescence is the name of it. He's not an adult, but he's also not a kid. And it's a complex question, and that's the questions it wants to ask, in my opinion. He seems perfectly aware of what he's done. It's quite a heavy thing. The security guard who watches the CCTV doesn't have any interactions with Jamie, but he's a fucking creep. I'll tell you that now. And he is there to display that, that on the surface, it's always there. It doesn't have to resort in violence, but it can just be an oppression that the guises in which misogyny can take in modern society. And he sums that up. He gets very close, invades her personal space, disregards her, thinks he knows all sorts of stuff, acknowledges he doesn't know better, but is still willing to shoot the shit with her in a professional capacity about things he knows nothing about. And he also mentions how he hates his job, and kind of pushes down that societal line of thinking, where obviously not with his job, but similar to what Jamie thinks at times about hating certain things. But the CCTV guard, I think he goes pretty nameless, but he might have been mentioned right at the start. I missed it, but he's a creep. And he is a sort of, in this episode, he is a personification of quote unquote, soft misogyny, where, it's just showing that it's ingrained, that permeates society in everyday life, whilst also showcasing that whole aspect of, I hate my job, which kind of showcases that toxic masculine vibe. I suppose there's nothing wrong with hating your job, but, it also uncovers where some of these negative thoughts and derogatory thoughts kind of stem from, about how you're feeling yourself, sort of. The episode itself is, and I don't use this term often, you will see the more I upload, but this episode is TV gold. This is TV gold. This is a historic piece of television, in my opinion. Everything that it does, it's just incredible. It's first and foremost entertainment. I keep saying this, and secondarily, it's educational. And I just think with that in mind, it's just gonna be a really historic show. This is going to win awards. I don't think that's particularly a hot take. I don't think it is from any point of view. Obviously, I've heard people say as much themselves on comments, but this is going to be an award-winning show, isn't it? There's good reason for that. Like I say, it does what it needs to do. It entertains, and it provides that educational point, and try and showcase things like, ingrained misogyny, but also, like I say, it's just entertaining. It's just a good show. Very good, very well written, very cinematic. And this episode is just pure entertainment. It had me hooked. And again, it's not a term I use a lot. It's not, but it's TV gold. It's TV gold. It's worth paying attention to for that. But yeah, mark my words, this will be an award-winning drama. It's got all the hallmarks, all the pickings of it. From you've heard me speak about every aspect of this show with aplomb: cinematography, sound design, soundtrack, acting, storyline, one-shot sequencing, links to the cinematography, but nevertheless, it's a unique point in and of itself. 20 years ago, this would have garnered millions of viewers on a Sunday evening for British television. It would have been a prime time classic, and it's following through into episode 3, where it's putting a really good outing, a really strong outing. That then does allow me to feed into my next point, where I did want to talk about the sound design again. So if you watched the last episode, you'll know that I drew particular attention and give high praise to the sound design. And maybe it's because I'm watching it on the bounce on the same night, and it's, in my head a bit, I'm noticing it. But the sound design in this episode the soundscaping was insane, incredible. And I keep throwing terms like that around, insane, incredible, but it truly is. I don't know what else to say. It just is incredible. There's no two ways about it. There's no beating about the bush. It's something spectacular. It's something spectacular. And it hits it on the head again. So I'm going to actually just pause it now and have a look who does the sound design and editing, and we're just going to heap some praise on them. So I'm going to pause it. Well, I don't know what I expected, but it seems like there was a whole team on sound design, not even composers, just sound design, Foley, assistant sound editors. They all deserve praise. I won't rinse the names out here, it'll take too long, but they deserve praise because they did a fantastic job. They must have had such synergy in their collaboration, but the sound design, again, perfect. I spoke about it early on in this video where I said like I wanted to mention about that part, but it plays a huge part in this episode, a huge part. There's a recurring motif, as I worded it, and that is the fact that when Jamie's about to display his chronically flawed behaviour and really showcase the person that he is, the rain beats a bit heavier. You can hear it crashing against the windows, like a downpour, and the lighting gets darker, presumably where the clouds are rolling in, and it just creates this tense atmosphere. But it's also just genius, because remember, it's all just one shot, so there has to be cues somewhere that signify that change in mood. You know, it can't just come abruptly because there's no cuts. And they do this, they achieve that by using that motif, if you will. And yeah, it's just a huge part of it. The sound design in the last 2 episodes has been second to none. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it wins an award for its sound design alone, because it's just been that good. And it just complements the one shot episodes. It's just been that good. And it is just worth mentioning it. You know, just like the last episode in the school, we've had this episode where, you know, we're seeing where we are seeing Jamie as the person he is, and it's just a nice little piece to signify that. And it's genuinely a creative endeavour. It's its own thing. The sound design is its own thing. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the episode takes on the form of this fly on the wall thing, and this really fits the one shot take that we've been seeing throughout the series. But you know, a fly on a wall is nothing new. It's not. We've got to be honest about that. But the way that they have delivered it and the way that they have executed it, it is something. You know, you feel like you shouldn't be there. With there being no cuts, it feels like you're getting all the information firsthand. You're not missing anything. Nothing is lost. The whole thing is just great with that fly on the wall thing. It feels like you really are reading the notes or listening to the audio. Obviously, it's a visual experience as well, but in this aspect, it feels like you're ingesting the whole thing. You're seeing it from start to finish, the whole interview. And again, I like that it's from the perspective of Bryony, the professional, and not from the perspective of Jamie. And it creates a more professional aspect to it as well. Like, even though we all sat there and we, you know, I'm sure child psychologists have watched this, but we can all sit there and not know a thing about child psychology, and it feels like we do, because you just know that his behaviour is wrong. You don't know why necessarily, you know, obviously you know it's misogynistic, you know that he's, you know, fucking murdered someone, but, you know, the nuances, you might not know what they mean, what they symbolise, but, you know it's wrong. So you feel like you know a bit more than you do. You see the whole thing start to finish as if you're in on the session, but it's still that feeling. The whole episode is basically in one room, and you get that claustrophobia, you get that brooding, heavy atmosphere, and it's all there. It's all there for you to feel, and it just works. There's no other way that I can describe it. It just works. It just works. it just works. It's kind of like a perfect storm in that respect, in that, I'm repeating myself here, but just to sum it up succinctly, it's just that absolute collage of intense, well-crafted, brooding atmosphere that you get just alongside fantastic acting, quality writing, and that whole extended scene thing, the one shot thing, and it just creates this perfect piece of TV. It creates this slice of TV royalty, if that's what you want to call it. It just works. Now, the other thing I read is that this is Jamie's first acting scene. As we know, as we mentioned, Owen Cooper, this was his breakout role. But allegedly, this is the first scene that he actually acted. I don't know how or if I can confirm that, but apparently that's just what's been said. Trial by fucking fire. This is the first thing they put him into. I can see both sides of that. Brand new actor, never done a role before. What a perfect way, and dare I say, in this sense, an easy way to learn your character, to get to grips with your character by doing a fucking psych evaluation on them. It's crazy. They obviously liked what they saw when they casted him. They obviously felt he was capable. He obviously has confidence in himself. Bryony helps him. Bryony carries herself. And so you get this mix where this is a completely new, unexpected actor who's just dropping into the scene, and they're pulling off a performance like this. I can't say that I'm surprised. I'm going to say that. I can't say that I'm surprised. Seeing his performance in the first episode, he wasn't in the second episode, but seeing his performance in the first episode, knowing what I've heard, seeing the quality of production in the show, I am not surprised he whipped this out on his first, debut in acting. Now, I've also heard some silly things tossed around, like they did it with intense shots and, that sort of thing. Some of the improvisational nuggets that he took, slamming the table harder, he improvised that. Slamming the coffee off, that's improvised. When he's losing his mind, he's a bit more improvised. And, some of the lingo I've heard, again, this is difficult to confirm, isn't it? Because there's so much information just flooding about this because it's so popular. But I've heard that, he helped with, this is what I'd say as somebody my age. I get that. It was probably very insightful for the creators and the writers, because they can sit there and go, well, we think this is how a 13-year-old boy acts and talks, but it's a different kettle of fish. He knows the lingo. I don't. I'd argue I'm younger than most of the major players in the production staff there, and I feel like I lose track of lingo for that age group easily enough. So there is that. It would have been insightful. But his acting is incredible. He's going to be... I was talking to my partner about this. He's going to be a name. He's going to be seen. He's already been cast in Wuthering Heights. And I just know we're going to see him elsewhere. He's going to be an actor. Let's be honest. You see people in roles like this, especially in British dramas when they're starting out. They think, they've got what it takes, but they're going to have to work at it. Or, you're not going to see them blow up. But you look at him and you think, that's it. He's going to be an actor now, and you get that vibe from him, and props to him. I mentioned in the last episode that some of the supporting characters in the last episode were who also auditioned to be Jamie were very, very good, and I can't help but think, based off how good they were, that Jamie must have blown them away. Owen Cooper must have blown them away. He must have been all over it. And I've heard there is a video circulating, a behind-the-scenes nugget of extra bonus feature where we see Jamie's first audition. Now, I've not watched it yet. I might watch it at a later date after I've watched the whole series, but I am trying to limit my exposure to the show to avoid spoilers. I've seen a few bits here and there. I've read a few things from a few people, but I'm trying to avoid overall having any spoilers, and I'm about to run into the last episode, so I'm not going to watch it now. But I've heard that's about, and I've heard it's really good, really strong. But yeah, I don't want to spoil anything till I've seen all 4 episodes, so that's the limit of what I'm going to talk about here. But it's just incredible, and just seeing the performance he's put out, the chemistry that he has on screen with Bryony, and I don't obviously mean anything romantic or anything like that, but it's clear Bryony struggles with his character, but that chemistry between the two is there, and it seems real, and it's built on some solid foundations, and there must be a certain level of trust between these two for them to have gone about it the way that they did. And yeah, it's just, it's amazing he's managed to act that strongly early on in his career, with all the cameras, the lighting, the crew, the one-shot sequencing, such an intense scene with one other character, but it was necessary. It's a real frank discussion that, in the vein of the show, what we've seen so far, doesn't shy away from heavy and dark topics. So it's a frank discussion, but it goes at them heavy. He talks about if I did it, or he says, like, he admits to it, and then oh, I didn't mean it. He backtracks, but they go into quite some detail. He talks about his dad's anger issues. He talks about his lack of, want of a better term, game, his confidence, self-confidence. How he's sexually frustrated teen, or how he wants to, they talk about touching bits and private parts, and how he's seen leaked nudes, and it touches on that as a cultural thing, which is something that doesn't really get spoken about a lot, especially at high school level. Those images can find themselves in the hands of the wrong people, and I am talking grown-ass men, pedos, basically. But on another level is what that can do to people in that moment, the victims, when it's shared around school. And there's this whole aspect of Jamie went to ask her out then because he thought she'd be weak, and it does it in a way that makes you think. And again, like I said in the last episode, it exposes, that's the word I'd use, it exposes misogyny. Because if you listen to that, nobody says in the show, that is a problem. We take it from the point of view of the psychologist, not the lawyer, not the courts. They're there to just listen and assess. So they don't say, that is a problem, that is wrong. But then people online will go, well, he was just trying to help her. He actually says she is weak, yeah? And he says how after it was done, he could have touched her. He could have touched her. Other people would have touched her body, a dead body. Really fucked up shit, But he himself thinks he's a good guy because he didn't. You can see on the footage he didn't. But then he backtracks and says, but I didn't do it. That's not me on the footage anyway. Do you understand? It wraps it up as being a show that is also trying to create real world thoughts and real world conversation and real world discourse around around misogyny and domestic violence, or male on female violence. And it's doing that, and it doesn't shy away from it. Like I say, he literally talks about defiling a corpse that he's just brutally murdered. It's a 13-year-old boy. He talks about his dad's anger issues, and he goes into that side of things, what it means to be a man to a 13-year-old boy. It does not pull punches, but it doesn't hand you the answers on a plate. You have to make that connection as a viewer, yeah? In its own way, it breaks the fourth wall. You have to be a part of the solution. You have to be a part of the show, because if not, you're part of the problem. I know that's a broad thing to say, but if you watch that show and come out of it still defending Jamie, which some people have done, he's indefensible. You've seen the footage in episode 1, yet, as I said last episode, I've seen people online calling Katie a bitch or a cow. And it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. So it does deal with the dark topics, and it deals with them unflinchingly. It's a word I'd use again. I think I used that word last episode, but it's unflinching. But it makes you think. It doesn't spoon feed you. It doesn't mollycoddle you. And this episode really showcases how evil Jamie is. He's scary. There's no subtlety to that. The psychologist cries after he leaves the room for the final time. She cries because he is that much of a psycho. And that's it. There's no subtlety. He is just downright evil. he is, and he loses his shit, and he displays some split personality things to me. His anger snaps. It's like a click of a finger. He snaps, and then he's on one. And it's as soon as he hears something he doesn't like, which makes me think it isn't a borderline personality disorder, but he's just displaying that sort of thing. That's how fast it is. It snaps. But it also faces up and talks about examples of where these kids are picking up these toxic traits. It does talk about quote unquote bullying, because that is an issue, and that can breed toxicity, and that can breed resentment, and it can breed negative thoughts. But it also talks about toxic masculinity as a cultural aspect from fathers, brothers, uncles, grandparents, men in life. This macho thing, going to the pub, having a pint, getting a doner kebab and having a fight. Watching football and enjoying sports. And he talks about how he's not good at sports and he doesn't enjoy sports, and his dad is disappointed in him for that. Or he perceives his dad is disappointed in him for that. The expectation to be good looking or likeable even. He's shouting at this, the psychologist as he's dragged out of the room. Do you like me? Do you like me? Tell me you like me. He needs to have that affirmation. And you can very quickly see where these toxic traits and social media and Andrew Tate, another name coming up again, videos online, incel groups, you can see where these toxic traits permeate the situation in the show and in real life. And all it takes is, it doesn't even need to be that he's quote unquote being bullied. He's not being bullied. He's having the mickey taken out of him a little bit, but it doesn't even need to be that. It's that rejection. It's that no to asking him out that sets him off. And it shows us that, and we see that firsthand now, and it's revealed to us slowly, but the curtain is drawn back. But it is a chilling line. It's a chilling line when he says about, I could have touched her. Most other men would. Most other boys would. Because he's right. He's right. Most men who had stabbed a woman to death because she rejected them probably would have touched a corpse. It's sick. It's sick, but they would. But then he thinks he's a hero for that. He thinks he's done something right because he didn't. And it shows. That shows the issue. In that these men, these young, impressionable men, don't understand the gravity of it all. But they also don't understand why it's wrong. But then sometimes he does. He wipes the hot chocolate off the table. He's screaming in her face. He's trying to scare Bryony. But then he asks for another hot chocolate. But then she forgets. Or maybe it's a subtlety. Maybe she deliberately doesn't bring it. But either way, he doesn't bring it in. She asks him to sit down. And she doesn't bring it in. And then he says how he's undeserving of it. Because he shouted. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at with it. There is a conflict of the self. So on some level, to some degree, Jamie is aware that he is wrong. He is aware that his actions are incorrect. He still can't convincingly admit to the murder. He can't come to terms with it himself, but he knows it's wrong. She comes back in. He says, I don't deserve a hot chocolate, I shouted. He gets upset with himself for what he's done. For killing a girl, a young woman. And that's where we are with it. This episode is as much about the conflict of the self. A conflict of Jamie, between Jamie and what Jamie perceives to be manly and masculine, because he's impressionable and because he's at times being exposed to the wrong elements. The wrong aspects of masculinity, whether that be from online, from his teachers, from his parents, from his friends. And you do, in that moment, you can feel for him a little bit, because he has lost his grasp of what it is to be a man. He's lost his grasp of reality nearly. He doesn't know his left from right in that sense, because it's just so poisoned. And that's kind of where we are with it. It's kind of where we are with it. But again, that's why this episode works so well as his first acting performance. Because he really gets to tangle with himself. He gets to tangle with it. And he gets to figure out his character. But from the POV of Jamie, the character, not from Owen, it's a grim reminder of the impressionability of children, adolescence, and the innocence of children. He doesn't have to be taught it's wrong to know on a deeper level that it is wrong. But he does have to be taught to think the wrong thing is right in his mind, in his head, that it's acceptable to kill someone just for rejecting him. And anybody I've seen online defending him after episode 3 is a misogynist, or has, I've seen a lot of older women defending him amidst obviously the common rabble of men, presumably because their sons have displayed these traits. That's the only assumption I can make for a woman, a mother, to be common in defending Jamie. It's the only reason I can think of that, is that their sons are displaying these traits, and that on a deep level they're ashamed and concerned, or that they're just ignoring it. But if you defend Jamie after this episode, there is something seriously wrong with you. That episode was a classic, a TV classic. You can, award-winning TV. And I give it a 5 out of 5. I give this one a 5, a solid 5. I am excited to see what the next episode brings. What to expect from the next episode, I do not know. Because this episode threw me a curveball. I don't know. I'm expecting anything now. I was assuming the next episode would be the court case. But I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure it is now, because the show is trying to not spoon feed you answers, so I'm not sure it is. I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm going to watch it now, and I'll let you know. But other than that, thanks for watching.